Um, so let's get to our first review. I don't have a fun transition.
Mhm.
We decided to review the most recent Garfield movie starring Chris Pratt.
Yes, this was my recommendation. Very sorry.
You will be suitably chastised. But
Yes, yeah,
so, for as an adult who grew up with Garfield, this movie felt strange.
it did. Yeah,
So I think that there's a couple different ways we could look at this. Like, would I recommend this for adults? Is this like one of those nostalgic trips down memory lane where it's like, oh yeah, I remember that from Garfield, and I remember that from Garfield. They kind of have that in the first 10 minutes as they're setting up the characters on the assumption that some kids don't know who he is.
yeah. Like him loving to eat, and lasagna
Mhm.
is his favorite food, and he hates Mondays, and yeah,
Yeah. So they kind of speed run all the really nostalgic bits.
yeah.
So and I would say that the movie as a whole doesn't really offer a lot to somebody with a, how to put it, a context for what good movies are.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Daniel, give us the quick overview of this movie.
Okay, so the beginning of the movie, as DB pointed out, is kind of like this bit of the origin story for Garfield. Um, we meet him as a kitten, who's he's appears to have been abandoned by his father, but then he walks over to the Italian restaurant and he sees John Arbuckle eating dinner by himself, and then uh, Garfield proceeds to eat all of John's dinner, and from then on there out, Garfield is, as Garfield says, that's when he adopted John.
Yep. Uh,
Yeah, and so from there we also meet Odie, who just kind of like shows up, which
Yeah,
is a little weird.
you know what I was honestly expecting? I thought that the plot of the movie was going to be about Garfield having a comfortable life with John, and then like Odie would suddenly show up and it would be Garfield's friction with Odie. But then I realized that that was basically the plot of the first Bill Murray Garfield movie from 20 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so they didn't do that in this one, and actually, like Garfield and Odie are very chummy in this, which uh isn't really canonical with Garfield, because like the
Yeah,
running gag with Garfield is that he's always kicking Odie off the table.
right. And also it's like Garfield is like, to use some weeb terminology, is very tsundere towards him.
Yeah,
Because like he has affection for Odie, but he's always reluctant to show it.
right. Yeah. And so then the main story kicks in where Garfield and Odie are kidnapped by these two very big mangy dogs.
Well,
Uh,
one big dog and one like little hairless thing.
right, yeah, and then as they're kind of swinging from a rope in an abandoned shopping mall, uh, Garfield's long lost father, Vic, who is voiced by Samuel L. Jackson, shows up to rescue him. But they get caught by Garfield and Odie's kidnapper. What was her name?
Oh man, you're expecting me to remember that? Oof. I was hoping you would.
I want to say Liz.
I think Liz is the name of the vet, wasn't it?
Oh, that's right, Liz is the vet.
Um,
Who's barely in the movie, by the way. Um, so is John. Um,
yeah, like Liz has one scene.
yeah. Jinx.
That's right. That's
Jinx,
right.
and Jinx is voiced by Hannah Waddingham, who she's the owner of the soccer team in Ted Lasso, the tall blonde.
Okay. That's what I knew her from.
Yeah. And so oh, and one of the dogs was voiced by uh the one soccer player, the real cantankerous one. What was his name? Roy Kent. Yeah, Roy Kent. He
Oh, okay.
yeah.
So that's an interesting connection there.
Yeah. Um but but so Jinx and Vic, Garfield's dad, used to run in the same crew together, and she wants Vic, Garfield, and Odie to steal like 2,000 quarts of milk for her because
Right.
she got caught when they were trying to break into this uh, break into the farm to steal all the milk.
Yeah, like Lactose Springs or whatever.
Lactose, yeah,
Oh, I might be. I'm almost certainly getting the name wrong, but that's just basically,
yeah, it was lactose something, yeah.
yeah. And from there, there's this plot that it doesn't really feel like a Garfield movie. But as I was thinking about it, like if you asked me to write a screenplay for a 90-minute movie about Garfield, I think I would actually kind of struggle to come up with something that would last 90 minutes.
Yeah, same here because, well, one, I mean, he's based on a comic strip, so
Right.
you're talking about like Jim Davis, who was the creator of Garfield, would do a comic strip, and he'd have to tell a story in 3 panels,
Right.
and yeah, and then of course then the animated shows were all half-hour shows, and they had to do these, they do them in like you know 7 to 8 minute segments.
Right. And then on the first cartoon show, they even had U.S. Acres, Jim Davis's other field comic strip, to pad it out,
Right. Yeah.
which is the only reason anybody knows about that comic strip today.
Yeah.
Uh, and they had some longer stories, but those are usually like 40 minutes TV specials.
Yeah, like a Christmas special or Halloween special, or yeah.
Right, exactly. And what it kind of felt like they did here was it's like they had a couple of ideas on the cutting room floor for a kids movie story, and they just kind of shoved Garfield and Odie into it.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Which seems to be par for the course for a lot of movies these days is they just take a concept that they have for a certain movie and then just shove it into an existing IP because like, oh, the existing IP, that's going to make us money, because it's recognizable. Like,
Yeah,
mm,
I'm going to be honest. If this had just shown up on Netflix as Sony Animation presents Catastrophe and the Great Milk Caper or whatever, like we wouldn't have bothered to watch it. So you know what, the cynical IP ploy has some merit to it.
yeah, it does. Yeah.
Um, so again, like if you're somebody who like has any sort of sophistication with your movie choices, you aren't going to like this because there's like a couple of moments that are mildly amusing, but that's basically as far as it goes.
Yeah, and you could kind of tell too that like they were padding the running time because they would really milk a joke longer than they needed to.
Yeah, and they kept throwing in a lot of there's a lot of subplots in this, and I
Yeah,
just like don't feel like Garfield should be involved in them.
yeah, yeah. This movie kind of reminded me of the Scooby Doo movie that came out like 3 or 4 years ago, where they tell the origin story of how Shaggy and Scooby meet, and then how they meet the rest of the gang, and then it just kind of like dovetailed into something else entirely, and had absolutely nothing to do with Scooby Doo at all. Part of me wonders if the creative both of these movies had the same creative teams involved.
Oh yeah, didn't that Scooby movie basically turn into like a Dynamite and Blue Falcon movie?
Yes, it was. That's exactly what it was. Yeah.
Oof,
Yeah.
that- yeah, because this was basically really about Vic dealing with his issues as as an absentee father, and also there's like this weird subplot with this bull and cow who were star-crossed lovers, where there's a lot of things in like the logistics of the movie that don't make a lick of sense.
Yeah.
Uh, like it was a small family farm that made this excellent milk. It seems like I think her name was Clarabelle. I'm just going to call her Clarabelle. Clarabelle was like
Yeah.
seemingly the only cow at this place, but the family farm went under and it was bought out by a big company. And then like they just went super industrial, but they're still cranking out huge amounts of milk and cheese off of this one cow. And there's no
Yeah.
indication that there are any other cows at this place.
Yeah. Unless it's like some weird synthetic milk and that they're using, but I highly doubt it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the bull is just sitting on the sidelines, sadly looking upon his lost love. Actually, that's kind of a running theme for this movie is just people who are stuck on the outside looking in on something they love.
Yeah.
Because that turns out to be the Vic's deal with his son Garfield. Um,
Yeah.
Now, what's kind of funny is that boy, boy Hollywood, way to not be a racist, cast Samuel L. Jackson to be an absentee father who's a criminal.
Yeah. Way to go. Oof.
So yeah, it's just not a good movie in my opinion.
Yeah.
Now, if I look at the question of is this an all right movie for kids, Daniel, what's your take?
Uh, it depends on how old the kids are. I would say like 4 to 7 is probably a good age range. And anything any older than that, and those kids are probably going to get bored really fast.
Yeah, because there's like a lot of frenetic action in sections. Um, I will say that in movies' strong points from like a writing perspective, they did a pretty good job of setting or like a setup and payoff. Like early on in the movie, Garfield orders food with drone delivery and goes, "Oh, I love the future." And then later on in the movie, when they need a rescue, he suddenly orders a whole bunch of food, which causes a flight of drones to come,
Yeah. Yeah.
which they use to escape. It's like that was kind of clever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Elephant in the Room that everybody was complaining about before the movie came out. Casting Chris Pratt as a Garfield.
He doesn't work as Garfield.
Not very well, no.
Yeah.
The other thing that was just wrong was his lips moved the entire time. That isn't how Garfield is supposed to work.
No, Garfield talks with his thoughts. Yeah.
Which, mind you, would be weird if you had all these other characters talking with their lips, but that's never stopped them before.
Yeah.
Like as
Yeah.
soon as the movie started and he was introducing himself and started moving his lips, I was like, "What the hell is this?"
Yeah, like, oh no. I think of the one cartoon show from like the 2010s. I think his lips moved when he talked.
Then he is truly lost.
Yes. Uh, yeah, but yeah, I will say with Chris Pratt, like I liked him better as Mario than I did as Garfield.
Definitely works better.
Yeah.
Because like what Chris Pratt brings to the table is that he has this everyman quality where Garfield is not like Mario's everyman. Garfield is not everyman. He's supposed to be kind of a weird, goofy character.
Yeah. He's a fat lazy cat who hates Mondays. That's
Yeah,
yeah.
it's not that deep.
Yeah.
Actually, now that I think about it, I think that might be part of this movie's problem is that so a few years back, I want to say it was Illumination Studios did a loving portrayal of the Peanuts. I think it was them. Maybe it was Blue Sky. Um,
Yeah, it was one of those two. Yeah. No, yeah, yeah, I remember the movie, but I can't remember who made it. Yeah.
but like for everything I understand, the movie was like very heavily regulated by the Schultz family,
Mm.
and their objectives uh, like in their objectives, it was to just make sure that it was like a loving tribute to the man. So like no funny business. And it was just like a bunch of highlights of the series.
Yeah.
Um, and but now I think about it, like if you think about Peanuts versus Garfield, Peanuts has a lot of because Peanuts has a lot more characters. They have a lot more bits to reference. Where Garfield really it's just him, John, and Odie,
And occasionally normal.
and occasionally normal. Yeah, like there is a cast of characters, but none of them are particularly developed because
Yeah.
it's just a silly gag comic. It's like it's something you're supposed to read uh, for a few years and then you move on.
Right. Yeah. It's something you see in the funny pages. You would see in the funny pages of the newspapers, and then all right, all right, we'll see what
Yep,
happens to them tomorrow. You know?
exactly. Now, as far as like like there are things here that are mildly inappropriate for kids. There are some oddly scary bits with the villain. Like
Yeah.
she has this like mood necklace that glows, and they just always frame her in very like I could see the target small kid audience getting disturbed by her.
Yeah. It kind of. She definitely had a Disney villain quality to
Yeah,
her.
yeah, kind of like kind of channeling Yzma from The Emperor's New Groove.
Yeah.
Um, there's reference. In fact, she even eats a little bird voiced by Jeff Foxworthy, apparently.
I didn't know
Uh,
that was Jeff Foxworthy. Wow.
yeah,
Huh.
I was just looking over IMDb and I was a little shocked myself.
Wow.
But he was like a blink and you miss it cameo because I wonder if he was supposed to be a blue bird to represent Twitter because he was talking in like soothing platitudes.
Oh, probably. Yeah.
But like, yeah, she just ate him.
Yeah.
So parents might want to be careful of that. And also, like, early on, they make like when somebody finds out that John went to the restaurant alone, somebody says, "Yeah, you should get on the dating apps like Tinder and Bumble." It's like,
Like,
why is there a Tinder reference in this small child's movie?
yeah. Like, ooh, okay. Yeah.
Um, Talking about the animation for a moment, it was fine.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, it was all right. They're definitely trying to channel illumination in terms of the style.
Yeah, and definitely like they do get some of the visual references right. Like certain ways that Garfield moves are comic strip accurate.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of the new characters don't look like they would fit in the comic strip.
No, especially his dad.
Yeah, and the bowl too. Now, some of it could just be that they added more details to make the characters distinctive in 3D.
Mm,
I don't know if they would have asked Jim Davis to design the characters for them. Like that seems like something they should have done, but
yeah. Yeah.
couldn't say if they did or not. Of course, Daniel, there was one moment early on in the movie where I said, "Oh, this is going to be one of those Sony movies."
Oh, yes.
The-
The obligatory product placement. Yeah.
Yes. Basically, there are two types of Sony movies in general: normal movies that Sony just happens to make, and then movies where it's like, oh no, the villain who is not using a Sony product is on the loose. I have to use my Sony cell phone to use to use whatever messenger service paid for the advertising to call my friend who is on his Sony laptop playing video games, playing a PlayStation video game that's imported to PC. Uh, and he'll say, "Oh, hey man, you need some photo evidence. Let me get my high quality Sony camera here so we can go down and solve the crime."
Yeah.
This was more in the second camp. There was really only the one reference I noticed, but that's because it was mostly a cast of characters who were non-humans who didn't use a lot of tech anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
forgettable, not a great movie. If you have kids, your kids probably deserve better.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Well, just have them watch Mario again.
Yeah, like if you need a Chris Pratt CGI animated movie, just have them watch Mario again.
Yeah.